Thank you all for joining us today for this cell series session, The Future of Cancer Care, Innovative Oncology Advancements, and Their Clinical Implications. Before we get started, I do have a few housekeeping reminders. Please use the Q&A box or the chat function to ask any questions. This session is being recorded as long as Zoom continues to cooperate with us. So if you'd like to watch a replay, it will be on our NCC YouTube channel by the end of the week, probably by the end of the day. And finally, you'll receive a survey link at the end of the session via email to rate this session. We would really love for you to complete that so that you can assist us with program evaluation, both for this program and any topics that you want to see in the future. So without further ado, I'd like to briefly introduce our presenters for today. Dr. Harry Menon is a board-certified medical oncologist and hematologist at the William N. Pennington Cancer Institute at Renown Health and an assistant professor of clinical internal medicine at the University of Nevada, Reno. And Kristen Gurney is the director of clinical research for Renown Health, working to ensure that there are clinical trial opportunities available to patients in every healthcare specialty. Thank you both for joining us. Please go ahead and share your screen if you want to pull up your presentation and take it away.
Sure, I will share my screen and do a quick introduction to the research department, and then I'll pass it over to Dr. Menon. And I am on one screen. Could you just let me know if you can see those?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. Try to get this in full screen there. Okay. So the Office of Clinical Research at Renown focuses heavily on expanding access to clinical trials. Our mission is to facilitate research as a care option for our patients, for investigators and clinicians, students, and the community. Our vision is to increase access to innovative care options through collaboration, compassion, and providing the necessary resources to bring these options to our community. And we maintain a diversity commitment statement as well to make sure that the trials and the research that we're participating in is inclusive of everyone in our community. Our values are rooted in knowledge, compassion, transparency, and advocacy. We think it's really important that everything we do is transparent and accessible to the community, and we're doing that with compassion and the patients in mind at all times. The structure of our department, we have a centralized research office with research coordinators, programmatic support, billing compliance support, and then a wide range of partnerships, both internal to Renown and external, particularly with our affiliation with the University School of Medicine, that's really propelled this work forward in our community. And we're regulated by several different agencies, the FDA, Department of Health and Human Services, OHRP. Of course, we're adhering to HIPAA at all times when we're working with these patients, as well as Nevada laws that stipulate some guidelines around how we conduct research in our community. Our office tries to streamline this process for everyone who's involved so that it's really fluid and successful and not a burden to anyone who's participating. So we offer support in project design and execution, budget development, regulatory and IRB navigation to make sure that all of our studies are compliant, study coordination, working with the patients and different departments to make sure that their visits run smoothly, sample processing, phlebotomy, data management. We're 100% electronic, so that helps us to contribute to data integrity on our studies. And we can open a new clinical trial in about 4 to 8 weeks, which is really great so that we can bring these studies to our community as quickly as possible. Like I was saying before, we really focus on integrating research in as a care option. I'd love to see someday that we have a clinical trial as an option available for every disease indication that Renown Health sees, so that the patients can have a really collaborative conversation with their provider about their standard care options, as well as this trial that's available to them, and then decide what's best for them. But the access right now is really limited in our area, so we're really excited to partner with clinicians such as Dr. Menon to really expand that access for our patients. The current oncology portfolio houses about 50 active recruiting clinical trials in various disease indications, primarily in lung, breast, and GI conditions. And then we also have access to several additional cooperative group studies. These are studies that are run nationally and really focused on advancing the standard of care from a cooperative setting, investigator-initiated kind of setting. So they're available if we ever needed to open them for additional patients that come in conditions. Our studies span medical, surgical, and radiation oncology, all phases, as well as interventional or observational studies. So we have a wide range of opportunities for patients. And not totally related to this presentation, but we also have our Children's Oncology Group membership, which provides similar opportunities for our pediatric oncology patients as well. And just to demonstrate some of the growth in this area over the past few years, our trial portfolio has grown significantly in the oncology space, like I mentioned, to about 50 clinical trials. And then the number of patients that we've been able to work with over the past few years has grown as well. Specific to oncology last year, we supported the enrollment of 173 patients to clinical trials. That's both to observational and interventional studies. So we're really seeing a great increase there, and that's just providing additional access and opportunities to patients in our area. So with that, I will kick it over to Dr. Menon, and I can continue to share these if you'd like, Dr. Menon, or I'll let you take over.
Let me see if I can do it here.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So from a medical oncology standpoint, we talk about oncology treatment trends. The historical utilization of chemotherapy has been sort of the cornerstone of treatment for these different malignancies. And one of the things that we consider with that is that there's a significant burden when it comes to toxicity, as well as less precision that's involved in this care. It's less disease specific. And so we always hear sort of historical horror stories that patients hold on to about going through chemotherapy and how it was something that was very difficult for loved ones to go through. And so it represents a barrier of sorts in the sense that there isn't as much of an understanding of where these treatments have evolved to in recent years. One of the things that has helped that is the discovery of different molecular targets, and that's really revolutionized oncology care in a number of different diseases. And so these days, we utilize a lot of biomarker testing and something called molecular sequencing analyses. And that's allowed for more specific targets for therapies. And so that's a design of what we call precision oncology that has allowed us to really personalize cancer care for patients that have come into our clinic. So this schematic kind of talks about what oncology has evolved to over the years. And for a very, very long time, we talked about the utilization of surgical treatments primarily for cancer. And then in the 1900s, radiotherapy was developed and X-rays were used to treat tumors. In the 1940s, that evolved to the use of chemotherapies, and that started with the use of nitrogen mustard-based therapies that were developed to treat both blood and solid tumors. And that was sort of the standard that had some levels of evolution over the next 40 years, but it wasn't until the 80s that there was a development of these molecular antibodies, tyrosine kinase inhibitors that were designed and started to come into play in terms of research for development of treatment of these diseases. And that continued to evolve in the 90s, where there was a very big leap in medical oncology care. And then in the 2000s was when the checkpoint inhibitors started to be developed. And these are forms of what we call immunotherapy. And what they did was they stimulated the immune system to fight against cancers. And one of the first success stories with that was in the use of melanoma, the utilization of immunotherapy for Jimmy Carter, and how that was a significant game changer for his disease and subsequently for many patients over the coming years. So as we talked about, chemotherapy was first utilized in the 1940s. to disrupt cancer cells, and that then evolved into the utilization of multi-agent therapeutics for broad-ranging capabilities in different types of cancers. And so this was combination chemotherapy agents that were pretty broad-based in application. These were potent agents. They had significant toxicities associated with them, but there was degrees of success associated with this. And for instance, testicular cancer treatment was developed by Larry Einhorn in the 1980s at Indiana University, and that turned testicular cancer into a potentially curable disease despite the staging of it. So patients could have metastases in the brain and be considered curable. And to this day, that is the same protocol that we would use for upfront therapy. And so there is no stage 4 when it comes to testicular cancers because anyone can potentially still be cured with this chemotherapy. In the 1970s, tamoxifen was developed as a selective estrogen receptor modulator for breast cancer, and it continued to evolve from there. And other targeted therapies started to be developed in the 1990s. That included the use of a drug anastrozole, which was for breast cancer, rituximab, which was a major discovery for the treatment of B-cell lymphomas, and trastuzumab, which was utilized for a specific type of breast cancer with HER2 positivity. The sort of sea change that came in oncology, though, in my opinion, was in 2001. That was when imatinib was used to block the Philadelphia chromosome. And that changed the landscape for the treatment of CML, chronic myelogenous leukemia. That disease used to be considered a disease with a high morbidity and mortality, treated in a similar manner to acute myeloid leukemia. And the discovery and utilization of imatinib created a process where the molecular target that was driving the sort of evolution of CML and the pathogenesis of CML, imatinib shut that down entirely. And in so doing, it turned this disease into a chronic disease with many patients living to a normal life expectancy. And today, imatinib is still used, although there are some second-generation drugs which are used more frequently, and third and fourth generation drugs which have continued to improve the outcomes with CML. But that utilization of imatinib really was the thing that sort of changed this process entirely. The 2000s also saw development of novel therapeutics to shut down the cell cycle signaling pathway and change the treatment landscape for diseases such as renal cell carcinoma and non-small cell lung carcinoma. And these were different tyrosine kinase inhibitors like sunitinib for renal cell carcinoma, which was developed in the mid-2000s, about 2005, and then erlotinib and gefitinib for non-small cell lung cancer. Anti-angiogenesis drugs were also developed around that time. These drugs targeted blood vessel growth formation. So in a manner, they were starving the cancer by starving the blood supply to the cancer. And the drug bevacizumab came out in that time and was used to treat colorectal carcinoma and has since found success in a number of different diseases as well. Widespread utilization of molecular sequencing, what we call next generation sequencing, to profile cancers and find molecular targets started to become a standard of care for treatment. And it's now something that's done for all advanced cancers. The utilization of different testing modalities, such as liquid biopsy versus tissue sampling, has further improved the efficiencies in treating patients. One of the concerns with NGS testing was that you need to have a certain amount of tissue in order to be able to do this testing. But with different advances in the testing market and new technologies that have come to market, we're now able to do that with just drawing a sample of blood. And so, for instance, in non-small cell lung cancer, we can do what we call liquid biopsy. We take a sample of blood and we send it for NGS testing. And we're able to identify different molecular targets that may be targeted in as little turnaround as 7 days. Whereas before, this would take several weeks to do. And so this, again, represents the sort of advancement in oncology diagnostics and subsequent therapeutics. In 2011, I alluded to this earlier, ipilimumab changed the landscape of treatment for metastatic melanoma. And it did so by harnessing the immune system to attack cancer cells, which was a different sort of philosophy from what chemotherapy does in terms of how it's able to help the host immune system to really become supercharged in that manner. And so immunotherapy has further changed the landscape for many different diseases in cancer. So for instance, immunotherapy is a cornerstone of treatment now for lung cancer, for hepatocellular carcinoma or liver cancer, for renal cell carcinoma in combination with molecular targeted therapies, in breast cancer, the triple negative landscape, and in many other diseases beyond that. And now as we get into technologies being developed today, there are antibody drug conjugates. And this type of therapy uses the targeted therapy principle, and it creates a more sophisticated deployment of chemotherapy. So in the past, chemotherapy was very broad in the sense that we would put it into the system and it would kind of attack everything. It would poison everything in the body and create a number of different toxic complications. But now what we do is we're able to attach a chemotherapy payload to a monoclonal antibody so that the chemotherapy is delivered to cells with the target antigen for that specific antibody. And so what that's able to do is it's able to find these targets on the cancer cells, and then the chemotherapy is delivered to those cancer cells for a much more specific deployment of chemotherapy. And an example of this is the drug trastuzumab deruxtecan, which goes by the name Enhertu commercially. This is a highly efficient antibody drug conjugate that has changed the landscape of breast cancer treatment significantly. And this is now being used pretty much in all advanced breast cancers. And the sort of targeting for that has become more and more broad in the sense that we're seeing that this drug can work for even the slightest expression of HER2. And that is something that has really helped a lot of patients and has also helped them in terms of giving them prolonged quality life. This drug is now being used in other diseases that express HER2, and that include gastric cancer, colorectal cancer, lung cancer, and a number of different diseases beside that. Further manipulation of the immune system has led to further advancements in cancer care. And the most headline-grabbing one of these things is CAR T cell therapy, or chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapy. And this technology involves engineering the T cells in the immune system to identify and attack cancer cells with specific markers. And this was pioneered by Carl June at the University of Pennsylvania in the late 2000s and into the 2010s. And it was first used in acute lymphoblastic leukemia in a pediatric patient in 2011. It is now used for a host of different diseases, including lymphomas, myelomas, and leukemias. And going further than that now is the creation of these type of therapies called bispecific T-cell engagers, or BiTE therapies. And what these therapies do is they link T cells to a tumor-associated antigen to attack tumor cells in a targeted manner. And so this kind of takes on that same philosophy of engineering the host immune system to be programmed and target the cancer cells specifically, and represents another novel method in which we're able to attack these cancer cells while limiting toxicity to the rest of the patient. Earlier detection of disease and determination of resistance patterns has allowed for earlier intervention and better outcomes. One of the things that has been evolving in recent years is the utilization of circulating tumor DNA to detect recurrence earlier. And ctDNA can allow us to identify when a patient is progressing before scans even show that. And what that allows us to do is to potentially intervene sooner before the cancer causes deleterious effects on the patient. It allows for refinement of screening strategies to improve rates of detection at earlier stages, and it allows for curative strategies to be developed and refined in a manner that allows for a more specific utilization and targeted utilization of different systemic therapies. One of the things that has helped in that evolving process now is that it has allowed for refinement in the screening of colon cancer. So colorectal cancer screening now starts at the age of 45. And going beyond that, it has allowed for different methodologies when it comes to screening. So while colonoscopy remains the gold standard, it's always been a bit of a challenge to convince people to go through the process of getting a colonoscopy. And there are methods beyond that that allow for interventions that can potentially pick up cancer. They're not perfect at this point in time, and colonoscopy still remains the gold standard, but there are blood-based assays that can be utilized. There are tests like Cologuard that can be utilized, and all of these things have been developed in such a manner to help improve the overall landscape of early detection and better outcomes. So we're also able to refine how we treat and who we treat in order to, again, improve the efficiency and precision of our treatment strategies. The TAILOR-X trial for breast cancer allowed us to determine that there were a number of patients who were being overtreated for breast cancer. And so the TAILOR-X trial allowed us to reduce that by creating a methodology for us to determine who needs that chemotherapy. In a similar manner for colon cancer, there's an ongoing trial that's looking at the potential overtreatment of certain colon cancer patients and changing the paradigm that it was established many years ago, that patients with a certain stage of colon cancer absolutely needed to have chemotherapy, where other patients did not. And what we discovered when looking through epidemiologic databases was that patients with stage 2 colon cancer, depending on the circumstances, sometimes had a worse outcome than patients with stage 3 colon cancer. And that led to the utilization of new modalities to try and determine who specifically needs chemotherapy to help clean up the system and reduce the risk of a potential recurrence of disease. The Circulate North America trial is ongoing, utilizing circulating tumor DNA to determine who may need chemotherapy. What that allows for is reducing toxicities and utilization of supportive care methods, and that allows for augmentation of cancer care, creating better quality of life metrics during treatment. So in summary, there's been newer iterations of therapy across the board, whether it's antibody drug conjugates, CAR T-cell therapy, bispecific T-cell engagers, and immunotherapy, which has pushed oncology treatment forward to where we currently sit today. There are new targeted therapies being developed that further inhibit cancer proliferation at the molecular level. There are new targets being discovered that allow for different diseases to be treated in novel ways and change the prognosis of many different cancers. And there are advancements in detection, which have improved the point of initiation of therapy, and that has impacted prognosis significantly. And finally, supportive care oncology has led to improvements in quality of life and survival metrics. And that includes the use of early palliative care methodology. So at the Pennington Cancer Institute, we have a palliative care clinic, which is very involved in helping our patients with improving different aspects of their quality of life, including pain control and symptom management, but also including trying to incorporate different philosophies in regards to what a patient may consider the most important aspects of their quality of life, and trying to make that a more personalized process so we can do a better job of helping patients to go through this journey with the right metrics in mind. In addition, we now have the Oncology Wellness Center. Dr. Madeline Hardacre is the person who has really taken that forward in marvelous ways for our clinic and for our community, incorporating integrative oncology methods to help patients with supportive care metrics, including improving diet, improving exercise, and helping with other metrics that allow patients to, again, have a substantial improvement in their quality of life as well as their survivorship. So what are the future opportunities in cancer treatment? Expansion of cancer therapeutics have created exciting possibilities, but access to care remains a major issue, especially in northern Nevada. It's a significant barrier, and in Nevada, there is no NCI, or National Cancer Institute, designated cancer center, and that's the case for many areas of the country. Access to clinical trials is a major problem for large areas of the country as well. There are many underserved populations which exist, and unfortunately has created a bit of a tiered system of cancer care. Those with the means can access the highest levels of cancer care, while others are reliant on what is available locally. In our community, we see that every day. We see there are certain patients that are able to get second opinions at the highest level cancer centers in the world, including MD Anderson and Memorial Sloan Kettering. And they're able to do that just by booking a flight and making some phone calls, whereas other populations in our community don't have access to those things, which means they have a limited access to things like clinical trials that may be beneficial to them. And this is a problem that occurs across the country. And so one of the things we are striving to do is to try and create a better sense of equality in what we're able to provide to the community. Investment in community oncology and development of community academic hybrid models have helped to address this access problem. The William N. Pennington Cancer Institute at Renown Health has been developed as a community academic hybrid cancer center, and our eventual goal is NCI designation. The goal is to bring high-level cancer care to underserved areas and populations, creating a level playing field in the oncology treatment landscape. Partnership with universities is important to expand clinical trial access and translational research opportunities. And what that means is being able to go from bench research at the PhD level and looking at developmental therapeutics, and then being able to create novel agents that can treat diseases. And that level of translational research is something that we strive to do in our community as well. One thing we've tried to do is invest in people to develop high quality care. In the last 4 years, we've brought in a number of high-level surgical, radiation, and medical oncologists to build strong multidisciplinary clinics. We've recruited high-level researchers to advance the work in preclinical science at the university level, and we've also brought in clinical researchers to help bring clinical trials and outcomes-based research to elevate our program. For example, we now have the capability of doing phase 1 clinical trials at the Pennington Cancer Institute, and that's really been brought forward by Dr. Lee Schwartzberg, who has served as our section chief and has been instrumental in helping to bring things forward substantially for our community in regards to clinical trials. We've done a lot of work in engagement with the medical school to elevate training for our prospective physicians and improve retainment of providers in the community. And we've done that with very specific engagement with the medical school, allowing for different research projects to come forward. My partner, Dr. Catherine Thomas, is one of the people who does that more than anybody and has really elevated things within our medical school to help bring that level of academia into our community. We've also been able to elevate research and academic standards through our clinical faculty. And Dr. Eric Kim, one of our urologic surgeons, has been instrumental in doing that as well, and linking things with the university to help bring our community forward again in that process. And as I alluded to before, we've invested in integrative oncology to create holistic treatment patterns that complement medical care and help treat the whole patient. So again, Dr. Hardacre, who we're very, very happy to have on board, she has been wonderful in helping our patients and has already created a sizable impact for our patients in the community. Other opportunities include investment in technology and facilities to build the infrastructure for improved cancer care. Using analytics to create competent treatment modalities that are evolving to meet the needs of our population is one thing that's very important for helping us to move into the new age of oncology care. These computational advances have allowed for better implementation of evidence-based care. And so, for instance, the use of AI to help guide in clinical trials, to help in terms of bringing greater access to our patients and also efficiencies for us in the Cancer Institute. We've also been building the facilities to bring new therapeutics to our community. So one thing to highlight is the use of radionuclide therapy, which has come to Reno recently for the treatment of both prostate cancer and neuroendocrine tumors. And this is done in the community. This is not yet at the Pennington Cancer Institute, although we're hoping to get these things up and running soon. But in the community here in Reno, the use of Pluvicto and Lutathera is available. And 3-4 years ago, it was not. Patients had to travel to Salt Lake City. They had to travel to San Francisco to get these therapies, and now they're available here in town. So what we've tried to do is we're trying to bring together the personnel and the infrastructure, and that has helped to create new treatment opportunities for the community. And going beyond that, we're now able to bring new treatment modalities to the fore that have previously not been accessible in our community. One example of this is bispecific therapy for hematologic malignancies and for small cell lung cancer. Bispecific therapy, the BiTE therapy that I referenced earlier, was something that was not utilized in the community at all, even 18 months ago. We were one of the first facilities to do the initiation of those therapies, which was before largely kept in large volume academic centers due to the potential for side effects associated with therapies. We've been able to successfully implement the utilization of those therapies from the outset, which has allowed for our patients to be treated for different diseases like multiple myeloma, diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, and small cell lung carcinoma with those therapies. And so what that has allowed us to do is it allowed us to improve access to care, because for a number of those patients, it was difficult to go to a place like UCSF for initiation of those therapies because they did not have the support to be able to do that, whether it was because of social situations, financial situations, not having the right support network around them to be able to travel somewhere else and to be able to get that therapy. They can now get that therapy here in town, and that's important for allowing us to be able to treat a wider population in our community and, again, to level the playing field. Currently, the only transplant center in the state of Nevada is in Las Vegas. That is the Sarah Cannon Center at Mountain View Hospital. The closest transplant center to Northern Nevada is at UC Davis, which unfortunately is difficult to access depending on what time of year you're trying to travel over the pass. And so what that underscores is the need for transplant and cellular therapy in Northern Nevada. Renown Health has been working toward expansion into the transplant and cellular therapy space in the next few years. And there's been a commitment from Renown to invest in new facilities with transplant and cellular therapy capabilities. And so we're hoping that in the coming years, we'll be able to bring that therapy to Northern Nevada as well. And again, eliminate another potential barrier to access for our community. Leveraging the expertise of personnel to create new therapeutic opportunities for the community is paramount for us to be able to continue to level that playing field. And that includes engagement in clinical trials that allows for faster access to new technology for our community. And I mentioned how we've been opening up early phase clinical trials at PCI under the guidance of Dr. Schwartzberg. And it allows for new therapeutic advancements to reach our community first. And one of the examples of this that has been highlighted in the last 6 months or so, histotripsy is a new minimally invasive treatment modality for surgical oncology. And we were one of the first centers in the country to get that available for us. And that came from engagement with the community and generous contributions from private citizens. But it has allowed us to be able to treat patients in our community with this new modality of care that has been very, very efficient, very effective for a number of patients. And we've had people traveling in from all over the country and even the world to get histotripsy done. But primarily, it's been our community that has benefited substantially from this therapy. In summary, improving access to care and investment in technology and facilities will bring the dynamic and evolving landscape of cancer care to underserved areas such as our state. Recruitment of high-level personnel allows for adaptation of high-level academic medicine in the community, and we've already seen examples of that, and that has continued to move forward, and we're excited to see what the future holds from that perspective. For the last bit here, I'm going to highlight some of the clinical trials at PCI, and Kristen has already spoken about sort of what has been done from that standpoint. And so there's been a number of clinical trials from different sources, from industry, from such pharmaceutical companies, from cooperative group trials as well, and they have expanded access to new therapeutics for patients in Northern Nevada. Industry trials mostly have been interventional in nature with novel therapeutics, and then cooperative group trials have been both observational and interventional in nature. The most prominent trials at PCI currently are in the breast, lung, and GI cancer landscapes. And that portfolio is expanding all the time, as Kristen showed us earlier. So one example in GI cancers is this Merck trial. And I'm just highlighting this as an example of what we've been able to bring to the community. This trial utilizes another antibody drug conjugate. This one, instead of targeting HER2, targets HER3. And this drug called patritumumab deruxtecan is utilized to attach a payload, which is this deruxtecan chemotherapy, to an antibody, HER3, which is expressed in a number of GI cancers. And this trial is directed at second-line treatment for colorectal cancers, biliary tract cancers, and hepatocellular carcinomas. And this is a phase 1/2 clinical trial. And so we've had the opportunity to put a patient on this trial, and we're excited for the possibilities of what that may be able to do for patients going forward. And we are actively participating to see whether this is a medication that can become the standard of care in later lines for these disease processes. Another trial at PCI for lung cancer, the BO45217 clinical trial. And this clinical trial is a molecular target trial for patients with previously treated KRAS G12C non-small cell lung carcinoma. And so what this is looking at is the efficacy and safety of this new compound, divarasib, compared to the established standard of care, which is sotorasib and adagrasib for this population. And what we're looking at is the evaluation of survival data for assessment of superiority with this novel agent versus the standard of care. And this is a phase 3 clinical trial. And what we're hoping to see from this is whether or not this new compound is superior to the drugs that are already on the market. Again, pushing the envelope forward in terms of improving our efficiencies with regard to these molecular targeted therapies. And then for a little bit of a different clinical trial, this clinical trial in breast cancer is called the PREVAIL trial, and is for prevention of chemotherapy-induced alopecia. And one of the challenges that many breast cancer patients face is contending with hair loss, and how from a psychosocial standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, that can be an incredible impediment to quality of life. And so what this is assessing is the effectiveness of cold scalp cooling on chemotherapy-induced hair loss in breast cancer patients. And what the primary outcome of this trial is to try and reduce the incidence of grade 2 hair loss. And this is for early stage breast cancer patients receiving chemotherapy. And this is an example of a patient-centered innovation in quality of life and supportive care. So this isn't to do with novel therapeutics, but it's to do with integrative oncology and focusing on the holistic measures for a whole patient in order to improve their quality of life and to improve their cancer journey. This is another phase 3 clinical trial. So there are many other clinical trials that are looking at novel therapeutics, other interventional trials, observational trials, and registration data to improve cancer care. Trials are available across the continuum of cancer care at PCI, and they are continuing to grow every day. And thankfully, we have Kristen's guidance to help us as we open up more of these trials to provide better access, again, for our community. So in conclusion, the oncology landscape has changed substantially in recent years and continues to evolve at a rapid pace. There are many opportunities for growth in Nevada and leveraging our expertise to improve access to care for our community. Many new clinical trials are being developed and are enrolling at the Pennington Cancer Institute. New trials are being opened up to better serve our community. And with that, this is Kristen's contact information for the Office of Clinical Research. And we'll open it to questions now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Menon. And Kristen, that was really fascinating and amazing. We don't have any questions posted yet, so I'll give everybody a second to drop in a question into the chat or the Q&A if they have one. But in the meantime, I have a couple of questions. So I'll just start it off. So this one is probably for you, Kristen. So the increase in the number of people participating in trials and the trials available year over year was tremendous. That chart was really amazing. What has Renown done to increase the number of trials available and then also to increase the number of people that are getting enrolled in those? How are you doing that?
Yeah, I think it's really multifaceted, and a lot of what Dr. Menon spoke to about the onboarding of clinicians and those that are interested in this type of work is really it's critical. As far as what the clinical research office has done, we've also been able to increase our staff in alignment with the increase in clinicians and the support for the clinical trials, which has certainly made it easier to onboard additional studies. As far as outreach to patients, we take a multifaceted approach, and there's always room to tweak this and reach more patients. A couple hundred onto studies a year is certainly not meeting the needs of the community, so we're always looking to grow that. But we screen our EMR. We use Epic, and so we're able to see the patients that are interacting with the health system, whether that's through medical oncology, radiation, surgical, so that we can try to preemptively approach patients when they're coming in for their initial visit with whichever department that makes sense for the given study. And we can do some reporting through there. We've also run some marketing campaigns depending on the study with some vendors that help us do that throughout the community. And then we also partner internally with our marketing team to try to build the foundation, not just about the studies that we're recruiting for, but also what is clinical research. It's a relatively new concept for our community. So providing that education on what it means to be part of a clinical trial, how to get involved, what does that process look like over the years, that's been really important. And we're actually really excited. It's a little too early to share the link, but we are working on revamping our externally facing website. So that'll have a lot more information about the trials that are actively recruiting right now for patients, for the community and for clinicians as well to see what they might be able to get their patients involved in.
That's fantastic. And so Dr. Menon talked a lot about treatment trials and a couple of the trials for survivorship. Are you also doing trials on like prevention, early detection areas?
We have some observational screening, early detection, and risk studies. The one that I'm thinking of right now is in the lung space, but we're always looking for opportunities there when we can find them. And the way we bring on trials is also multifaceted. So we could be reaching out to the industry sponsors themselves. They might come to us. The clinicians do some great networking at conferences to build those relationships. So we look for studies wherever we can find them.
That's amazing. So what can the community do, or what kind of, I don't know, what can people do to kind of help this along and help to continue the momentum? I know, Dr. Menon, you mentioned that workforce development is really important. Kristen, you mentioned that there's, still a lot of misconceptions about clinical research. So what really needs to be done to keep this growing?
Well, I think that the first consideration is just improving just access to information, right? There's a lot of information out there, and a lot of it is not fully vetted and fully accurate. And so there's a lot of misconceptions about what cancer treatment looks like. And so part of that is just looking for the right sources, trying to stay informed. And as Chris mentioned, we're trying to do that with sort of how we develop access points with new web pages and things like that to help improve things from that standpoint. And then beyond that, it's just being active and engaged in your healthcare, right? And one of the biggest problems that we encounter right now is the amount of patients who we see that have late stage diseases that could have been intervened upon earlier. And a lot of that has to do with, screening practices, prevention, and being sort of active in healthcare in that regard. And then from a community standpoint, community engagement's incredibly important to us. So we have a number of different community engagement activities. Moms on the Run is coming up soon. And it's just an opportunity to really network, to engage with people who are in all different facets of the cancer care spectrum, whether they are patients and survivors, whether they are providers, whether they are advocates. There are so many different ways to help people to get involved, and it could be, any number of ways of doing it. It could be helping with, for instance, hair loss and things like that, right? So I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's a hairdresser about, just the conception of hair loss and cancer treatment and how that changes the identity of a person, and what she is doing and what other people in that industry are doing to help that. All those different levels of conversations can help to sort of normalize these things and help to reduce the stigma associated with it, help bring it into the mainstream, and help people come together to really collectively move the needle forward.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of misconceptions out there about clinical research, but also about what cancer. I mean, losing your hair isn't a foregone conclusion, these days. And there are these opportunities. I mean, the cold cap, I know that a number of years ago, I saw people using the cold cap, and it was very kind of a new thing, and maybe this will work. And the fact that, it's picked up steam, and now there's this trial that's going to hopefully show, yes, this is effective, so that people aren't, I guess it helps us to really feel more confident in what's available and what we can do to improve treatment and survivorship all around. So and feel confident in those interventions. So I don't see any other questions. I didn't have anything else because you continued to answer my questions through the presentation after I wrote them down. So thank you both so much for joining us today. I would like to make sure to include Kristen's email. I will include that in the follow-up email in case anyone has additional questions or wants to learn more about what's happening at Renown with the clinical trials. And again, hopefully Zoom recorded this presentation, and we'll post that on our YouTube channel and include a link in an email to everyone today. So thank you again so much, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.